Art and chaos. Art expresses chaos. Artists have portrayed chaos in many ways throughout the history of art. They have depicted war, famine, or natural catastrophes, but chaos can be suggested even in the absence of specific content. For example, in the Native American artist's work Eclipse, one quick to see Smith's painting does not reference nature or reality. How, then, do you think she produces the feeling of agitation and chaos? Correct. She created agitation and a chaotic atmosphere by her use of multiple colors, lines, and shapes that all merge together and appear not to relate. The lack of order makes it chaotic. Our eyes dart around the canvas with nowhere to rest. It seems that quick-to-see Smith tossed a basket of shapes and objects into the air, including what looks like 3 fried eggs, as you can see in the top of the image, and now they are descending slowly to the ground. Art, experience, and memory. From prehistoric cave paintings, art has served to record and communicate experiences and events. African American artist Faith Ringgold is noted for her use of materials and techniques associated with women's tradition, as well as her use of narrative or storytelling, which is a long tradition in African American families. In Tar Beach, she painted images on canvases and surrounded the image with a border of pieced and quilted fabric. The title is city slang for a flat, asphalt-covered roof that serves apartment dwellers as an all-purpose yard for parties and picnics and for hanging out laundry. Within this painted patchwork quilt, she has literally and figuratively stitched together her memories of family, friends, and feelings while growing up in Harlem. In the center, lying on a white blanket, she depicts herself and her brother, while her parents and neighbors sit around the table enjoying a meal and conversation. Within the brightly patterned pieces of fabric and along the top and bottom, she has written some of her childhood experiences. She writes of one memory of flying over the rooftops at night and states, "I will always remember when the stars fell down around me and lifted me up above the George Washington Bridge. And when we look into the sky, we can see her flying magically amongst the twinkling stars." Art in the social and cultural context. Art can reflect the social and cultural context. In recording experience, artists frequently record the activities and objects of their times and place, reflecting contemporary fashions. The architecture, the hairstyles, hats and shoulder pads, even the price of cigars, as can be seen on the outside of the diner, all set Edward Hopper's Nighthawks unmistakably in the American city during the 1940s. The painting was inspired by a restaurant on New York's Greenwich Avenue, where 2 streets meet. The subject is commonplace and uneventful, though somewhat eerie. There is a tension between the desolate space of the vacant street and the corner diner, as the light of the diner spills out onto the street. The wall, flattened corner, and triangle of ceiling have a hard yellow glare that may have been produced by the fluorescent lights which had just come into use in the early 40s. Hopper's interiors are associated with temporary occupancy, and we're never sure if someone stands behind the curtained windows in the apartments across the street. We can see the way the customers are dressed. The men are wearing trilby hats. Although there are 3 customers, they appear disconnected, while the man and woman, who is the artist's wife, Jo Hopper, sit next to one another. We're not sure if they are together, as they are absorbed in their own thoughts. The waiter looks up as if he's been asked a question. Hopper's nocturnal narrative uses a specific socio-cultural context to communicate an unsettling introspective mood of loneliness, of psychological tension and alienation of being outside the mainstream of experience, and suggest the pervasive loneliness of modern times. Art and social consciousness. Art protests injustice and raises social consciousness. Images of Aunt Jemima have been depicted on pancake mix and bottles of maple syrup for generations. How many of us have really thought about what she symbolizes? Artist Betty Saar has been doubly offended by Aunt Jemima's state of servitude, which harks not only to the days of slavery, but also to the suffocating traditional domestic role of the female. Aunt Jemima is a stereotype of the Black American woman, a heavy, dark-skinned, maternal figure of smiling demeanor. Author Sharon Pattern states that this stereotype started in the 19th century and was still popular culture's favorite representation of the African American woman. She features in Hollywood films and notably in advertising. Unflattering images of African Americans have been common in popular culture over the past 150 years. Aunt Jemima is a caricature depicting a jolly, fat character who has been used recently to sell commercially packaged pancake mix. In The Liberation of Aunt Jemima, Betty Saar used 3 versions of Aunt Jemima to question such images. The oldest version is the small image at the center, in which a cartoon Jemima holds a crying child on her hip. In the background, the modern version shows a thinner Jemima with lighter skin, de-emphasizing her negroid features. The older one makes Jemima a caricature, while the new one implies she is more attractive if she appears less black. The middle Jemima is the largest figure and the most emphasized. Her checked and polka dot clothing is very bright and colorful. She stands upon balls of cotton, which symbolize the work of slaves. This Jemima holds a rifle and pistol, as well as a broom. A black power fist makes a strong silhouette shape in front of all the figures, introducing militant power to the image. The idea of Aunt Jemima, in any of its forms, can no longer seem innocuous. Saar enshrines these images in a shallow glass display box to make them venerable. The image of the liberated Aunt Jemima confronts viewers and compels them to cast off the stereotypes that lead to intolerance. Art and popular culture. Art can elevate the commonplace. Marcel Duchamp's fountain elevates the commonplace to a higher status. The fountain was his first so-called ready-made. Ready-made sculpture is mass-produced common objects, found objects, if you will. The artist selected and sometimes rectifies the object by modifying its substance or combining them with another object. Why should Duchamp want to make an already existing object into art? Duchamp belonged to an early 20th century art movement known as Dada. With the First World War as a backdrop, many artists contributed to an artistic and literary movement that became known as Dada. This movement emerged in large part in reaction to what many of these artists saw as nothing more than an insane spectacle of collective homicide. They believed reason and logic had been responsible for the unmitigated disaster of global warfare, and they concluded that the only route to salvation was through political anarchy, the irrational and the intuitive. Thus, an element of absurdity is a cornerstone of Dada, which is reflected in the movement's nonsensical name. The Dadas made a concerted and sustained attempt to undermine cherished notions and assumptions about art. The creation of ready-mades, Duchamp insisted, was free from any consideration of either good or bad taste. Qualities shaped by society he and other Dada artists found aesthetically bankrupt. The fountain is a porcelain urinal presented on its back, signed R. Mutt and dated. The artist's signature, or the so-called artist's signature, was in fact a witty pseudonym derived from the French Mott Plumbing Company's name, and that for the short half of the then popular Mutt and Jeff comic strip team. The art of this artwork lies in the artist's choice of object, which has the effect of conferring the status of art on it and forces the viewer to see the object in a new light. Art and the needs of the artist. Art also meets the needs of the artist who creates it, giving him or her an avenue of personal expression and social commentary. During the Great Depression, a branch of Works Progress Administration, the WPA, a federal work relief program, intended to help people in the United States, including artists, survive. The WPA made it possible for many artists to meet basic survival needs while continuing to work and be paid. Scores of public buildings were decorated with murals or canvas paintings. One such fresco was done by Jose Clemente Orozco, called Epic of American Civilization, Hispano-American. He painted it around 1932 to 1934. This work helped him survive financially, but also met his personal needs to express himself. With this fresco, he was able to express his outrage at what he believed to be financial and military injustice imposed upon the Mexican peasant. It revolves around the monumental figure of a heroic Mexican peasant armed to participate in the Mexican Revolution. Looming on either side of him are mounds crammed with symbolic figures of his oppressors, bankers, government soldiers, officials, gangsters, and the rich. Money grubbers pour hordes of gold at the incorruptible figure's feet. Cannons threaten him, and a bemedaled general raises a dagger to stab him in the back. Although we have discussed individual artists under specific functions, I want you to understand that each artwork can fit into many of the categories of functions discussed. For example, we can safely assume that all artwork meets the needs of the artist in some form or fashion. And Jesse Unox, a shaman's helping spirit, not only expresses religious beliefs, but also reveals the truth about the artist's cultural heritage. There are other functions of art that our book doesn't discuss, but just to know that the list is not exhaustive, that art may also provide an income for the artist. It can express imagination. It is an outlet for feelings and emotions. It may elicit and manipulate emotions within the viewer. It can create wealth. It can create fame. It can set trends. To create extraordinary versions of ordinary objects, give tangible form to the unknown, give tangible form to feelings and ideas, and refresh our visions and see the world in a new way.